Power Motor Company first quarter earnings conference call. All participants will be in a listen-only mode. Should you need assistance, please signal a conference specialist by pressing star then 0. After today's presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. To ask a question, you may press star then 1 on a touch-tone phone, and to withdraw your question, please press star then 2. Please note this event is being recorded. I would now like to turn the conference over to Michael Sieffert. Please go ahead.
Thank you. This is Michael Sieffert, the Chief Financial Officer of Green Power Motor Company. I would like to welcome everyone to our call to discuss Green Power's financial results for the period ended June 30th, 2021. I'm here today with our Chief Executive Officer, Fraser Atkinson, our President, Brendan Riley, and our VP of Sales and Marketing, Ryan Shetterly. During today's call, we may make comments or statements about our future expectations, plans, and prospects, which may constitute forward-looking statements for the purposes of the Safe Harbor provision under the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995 and applicable Canadian securities laws. Actual results may differ materially from those indicated by these forward-looking statements as a result of various important factors, including those discussed in our quarterly interim results and MD&A filed on SEDAR and on EDGAR. In addition, these forward-looking statements relate to the date on which they are made. We anticipate that subsequent events and developments may cause the company's views to change. Green Power disclaims any intention or obligation to update or revise any forward-looking statements, whether as a result of new information, future events, or otherwise. I will now pass the call over to Green Power's apologies. Also, during the course of today's call, we may refer to certain non-IFRS financial measures. Reconciliation of these non-IFRS measures can be found in our MD&A on SEDAR and on EDGAR, and is also located on our website at www.greenpowermotor.com. I'll now pass the call over to Green Power CEO, Fraser Atkinson.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks to all for joining our earnings call. Following my opening remarks, Michael will cover the financial highlights for the quarter. Brendan will speak about our operations, and Ryan Shetterly will join us for the Q&A. Our plan since our NASDAQ IPO last fall remains on track and firmly in place. As we had anticipated, we experienced a substantial increase in sales pipeline activity this summer as the economy reopened and various incentive programs came back online. We expect this surge to achieve our objective of obtaining positive cash flow this calendar year, with that momentum to continue into 2022. The sense of urgency when it comes to the topic of climate change is growing greater by the day, and the wave of mandates and supportive funding continues to grow. Earlier this year, there were numerous announcements around goals for the adoption of zero-emission medium and heavy-duty buses, in particular with school buses and transit buses. With the recent passage of the infrastructure bill, there will be funding available to support these lofty goals. To put this into context, in order to get to the 20% target for zero-emission school buses, 100,000 of the 500,000 school buses will need to be replaced, or 8,000 of the 40,000 school buses that are sold each year starting now. We started the monthly production of our BEAST school bus last fall, and the first of these are scheduled for delivery pursuant to customer orders in the next month. And more importantly, we will have inventory to meet the increased demand this fall. We'll circle back with more details on operations momentarily, but first I'll pass the call back to Michael Sieffert, Green Power CFO, to cover our quarterly financial results.
Thank you, Fraser. For the quarter ended June 30th, 2021, Green Power recorded revenues of $2.7 million and cost of revenues of $1.8 million, generating a gross profit of $850,000 or 32%. Revenue increased 17% compared to the first quarter of the prior year and was generated from the delivery of 5 EV Stars to Forest River, 14 EV Stars to Green Commuter, for which Green Power provided lease financing, 1 EV Star to Harbor Air, which will be used as a shuttle between the airline's various locations, and for which Green Power provided lease financing, and 1 EV Star to the Learning Disability Society of Greater Vancouver for use as a mobile classroom. We finished the quarter with completed vehicle and charger inventory of approximately 6.2 million, comprised of 7 EV Star Transit Plus, 42 EV Star Cab and Chassis, 5 EV Stars, and EV350 and charging stations. We continue to invest in production of EV Stars and B school buses, and as of June 30th, we had approximately 12.5 million in vehicles under production inventory that is primarily comprised of our various models of EV Stars and our Beast Type D school buses, which we expect to deliver later this summer. We have continued to invest in inventory since the quarter end and now have approximately 300 vehicles at various stages of production. We have ample liquidity to continue on the current rate of production with 31.3 million in working capital as of quarter end, including 9.1 million in cash, an undrawn line of credit, a strong balance sheet with total assets of 40.9 million and total liabilities of less than 4 million. We continue to manage costs while we scale up our business. Our cash costs for the quarter were 1.97 million during the quarter compared to approximately 2.03 million in the prior quarter. We anticipate the cash costs will continue to increase over the course of the year as we invest in our North American infrastructure and increase staffing levels. In summary, there's 3 key financial highlights for the quarter. First, we've continued to maintain our gross profit margin at 30% or better. Second, we've increased working capital by $500,000 and have ample liquidity to continue to invest in growth. And 3, our cash costs held steady at $2 million during the quarter, while our inventory increased by 50% over the quarter and over 3 times compared to last year. I'll now hand it over to Brendan for some operational details.
Thank you, Michael. My name is Brendan Riley, again, president of Green Power Motor Company. We've accomplished a tremendous amount recently at Green Power Motor Company as we expand our production capabilities and build inventory. We now have over 300 vehicles in various stages of production or are completed in inventory, which has been a massive undertaking. But our team has stepped up to the challenge, and I'm extremely proud, and I can't say enough about what they've done. Our current production capabilities right now are 50 units per month, and we expect that to continue an upward trajectory to over 100 vehicles or 100 units per month over the next year. Our supply chain remains robust with no material interruptions. While we have been successful in wringing some of the costs out of the equation, we have been unfortunately hit by higher shipping costs, which somewhat offset those gains. That being said, our goal is to increase aggressively driving down each unit cost on an absolute basis. Especially when we hit greater economies of scale, we expect our costs to reduce and the prices to the customers reflecting that reduced cost. Pardon me. While incentives and mandates will continue to aggressively drive adoption over the foreseeable future, our end objective over time remains to produce an EV that can completely, on a standalone basis, compete when it comes to price with other vehicles that are being sold in the markets, EVs and non-EVs. And we continue making progress on that front. During the quarter, we delivered our first 5 Green Power Cab chassis to Forest River. Our 2 technical teams are collaborating today and into the future, working to finalize the upfitting process at Forest River's facility with expected completion sometime in September. And our plans include a scheduled Altoona test shortly thereafter. Now, the Altoona test not only opens up federal funding for transit properties, but also serves somewhat of a buyer's guide to those purchasing vehicles, knowing what they're in store for with a lifetime with this vehicle. Our purpose-built EV Star shined the last time at Altoona with a score of 92.2, the highest score of any medium or heavy-duty vehicle ever tested of any type. We're obviously excited to get this Forest River vehicle covered by the Altoona test and open up the transit market. This is also a very exciting time for our Type D school bus, the Beast. as we have our grand unveiling at the ACT Expo later this month. These units have about a 2 to 3 quarter build time, and our first units from production increase last fall are rolling off the assembly line with an initial customer delivery later this month and more to follow in September. As Fraser mentioned at the top, funding for various mandates is solidifying rapidly, and we are excited to be putting wheels on the ground today and moving forward. And that concludes our prepared remarks. Operator, please open the floor for Q&A.
We will now begin the question and answer session. To ask a question, you may press star, then 1 on your touchtone phone. If you are using a speakerphone, please pick up your handset before pressing the keys. If at any time your question has been addressed and you would like to withdraw your question, please press star, then 2. At this time, we will pause momentarily to assemble our roster. Our first question comes from Greg Lewis with BTIG. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, and good morning, everybody. Brandon, you kind of talked loosely about, some of the shipping challenges that we're seeing in the market. As you think about, the progression of the build out, and congratulations on, the gradual scaling up you've been doing, and I guess it sounds like we're going to be targeting 100 units. At a certain point on a monthly basis within the next 12 months. As we think about these lead times for equipment, how are we thinking about that? Like, should we expect that progression over the next 12 months to kind of be slow and then accelerate in the back half of I guess in sort of the last quarter of that year target, or is it something where we're just going to gradually see the company be able to ramp production more steadily?
Yeah, Greg, that's a really good question. And that's exactly the issue that we're struggling with, I think, industry-wide, is there's a convergence of weird things happening at once. Supply chain issues are definitely something that we expect to affect really everybody in the industry into next year and possibly beyond, mostly when it comes to the semiconductor components, little pieces, parts that go into some of our controllers and inverters and things of that nature. We've been able to stay ahead of that by placing large orders early on, sometimes paying for them, and having those either dedicated to us or in our inventory. So those have been in short supply. But even other weird components have had some supply chain issues, and we don't know what those components are all going to be. We do expect little hiccups here and there, but very short-term supply chain issues, which may affect a month or two of production, at least for Green Power. But shipping is another issue, and not just shipping, ocean shipping, air shipping, but even interstate shipping. There's just a bigger demand than we have the ability to take care of for shipping. So it's driving up costs and sometimes delaying vehicle delivery or our production schedules, things of that nature. We don't what we stated in this in our MD&As is and what we stated on the earnings call here today is that we'll have the capacity to build those vehicles. We anticipate that those vehicles will be buildable and deliverable. Again, if there's supply chain issues, all bets are off. If COVID, rears its ugly head again, and entire supply chains shut down or customers shut down, So it's, Greg, I wish I had some very clear and concise things to tell you, but I think right now these are the best projections or the best ideas of what we'll have available to us and what we'll be able to do based on today.
No, hey, Brandon, that was super helpful.
I think, sorry to interrupt, Greg,
sure.
but sorry to interrupt, Greg, this is Fraser speaking, is that in the context of your question for what we are doing in terms of building up to 100 a month, in the event that we need to be producing product at a magnitude of that number, we have been spending a fair amount of time over this past year at looking at how we would accomplish that. And, whether that's through partnerships, whether that's through, other means of production beyond what we're doing right now, we do have sort of a midterm strategy, if you will, that will help move us in terms of moving out of just that incremental growth that you just described. Because, if the demand takes off, we have to be in a position to be able to handle that demand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, I also wanted to ask, about the transit bus business. It's interesting, right? I mean, I think people think a lot about EVs and, in the commercial side, and it's kind of been this, this e-commerce lockdown, acceleration in demand. But it's interesting because, where kind of green power fits in the market, it's almost like more of a reopening trade as campuses go back to work and people start flying. And, as we think about that transit bus market, I feel like on one of the previous calls you talked about transit in LA, that transit bus system operating at like 20% capacity, realizing that, I guess COVID is still a touch and go, I don't know, we're in a touch and go environment with COVID. Has there been any falling or pickup in interest maybe from some of these corporate campuses or cities around, thinking about how they're, going to approach their demand for transit buses? I mean, wow, it's already August of 21, so I guess we're already looking ahead towards 22. Has there been any kind of change in tone from some of these potential customers that'll probably be ordering buses, I guess at a certain point?
Yeah, this is Brian Shetterly, Vice President of Sales and Marketing. I'll go ahead and take that one. You're absolutely spot on. The demand, the peak in interest over the last 90 days in Silicon Valley as well as the Pacific Northwest, so between Portland and Seattle, some of the largest companies in the world really are just starting to put their put dates on when their campuses are going to be opening back up. And I would say between the beginning of September and towards the end of the year, you're going to see many of these folks, starting to bring people back. Therefore, right off the bat, enhancing their need for transportation. A lot of the companies right now are running, pilot programs and figuring out, exactly how many vehicles they need to deploy. So many of those companies are in the due diligence phase of figuring out exactly what their needs are going to be, and that's certainly kept us busy over the last 60 days.
Okay, hey, great. That's it for me, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg.
Our next question comes from Chris Souther with B. Riley. Please go ahead.
Hey guys, thanks for taking my question. The first one on Forest River, can you talk about any feedback from the original 5 that you shipped to them, timing of Altoona, and talk about where you see the potential with that customer after the announcement earlier this week they had with a competitor in the space. Do you see that announcement as limiting your potential for expansion beyond the 150 order, or could you also get an order in the thousands from them? Curious how you see that relationship. Is it kind of a bake-off between your 2 technologies, or is it different vehicles within their fleet that potentially be addressed between the 2 of you?
Chris, this is Brendan. I don't think we've got the details of what that order with that competitor that you mentioned are yet, so I don't know that we can really comment on what's going on. You know, again, it seemed to be powertrains for larger vehicles. You know, our arrangement with Forest River right now is for Class 4 EV Star platform vehicles. So I would have to wait and maybe get some details and maybe get back to you on that. But we're moving ahead with our Altoona testing, which is really that's going to be the real imprimatur on, you know, our vehicles being you know, the vehicles of choice for transit properties and others that rely on Altoona for basically, you know, a seal of approval. But at this point, we you know, we can only speak for ourselves. We anticipate once we have a fully integrated vehicle later this summer that you know, we anticipate orders coming in. We can't speak about them yet because they're not in hand, but we're again keeping our heads down and making sure that we deliver the best product for the market and help Forest River in the integration of you know, their components onto our vehicles.
Okay, got it. So maybe just, you know, you talked about the pipeline acceleration here, but curious, can you share any numbers around, you know, the order book from this, you know, acceleration that we've seen and where it stands today?
I am not sharing any orders that we have not announced yet. All I can say is hold on to your seat. There's going to be some big announcements, but that's all I can say.
Okay, got it. So, you know, maybe just in kind of the near term here, and you know, given kind of you know, indication that, you know, positive cash flow by year end, and you've got quite a few vehicles, you know, that are in various stages of inventory and kind of finished goods. Just kind of curious, you know, what is kind of the cadence that we should expect, you know, as far as, you know, the inventory build that we've seen over the last couple of quarters, you know, starting to see kind of a match between, you know, deliveries versus, you know, production. You know, is that something we're still looking at as like third and fourth quarter, September and December quarter, kind of starting to align as far as, you know, the production and deliveries? Is that kind of a good way to think about, you know, where you see the next couple of months here?
Absolutely. And to put this into context, the quarter that we just completed and filed had just over 20 vehicles in the quarter, and there weren't any school buses. And we've been spending a considerable amount of time and our resources since last fall building the production and that are part of the numbers that you were just referencing earlier. And the first of those vehicles, you know, the deliveries start within the next month. And we'll be doing a full unveil of the vehicle on August 31st, September 1st at ACT Expo. So that's a good example of, you know, the activity that we've been busy on and the resources we've been using to build up that inventory that will now just be kicking in the September and then, you know, more fully with the December quarters.
Okay, no, that's very helpful. I'll hop back in the queue. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Craig Irwin with Roth Capital Partners. Please go ahead.
Good morning, and thanks for taking my questions. So I was kind of surprised that this wasn't handled in your prepared remarks, right? And I know it's a tricky issue. Given that you never really want to bite the helping hand. But there's, you know, among the companies actually delivering, right? There's a lot of future deliveries, but among the companies actually delivering, there seems to be a conversation that's growing about the pending HVIP vouchers, the pending New York vouchers, the expected benefit from the infrastructure plan, putting near-term deliveries on pause. Having customers wait to see where they get the best potential support for being early adopters of medium and heavy-duty EVs, and the other opportunities for infrastructure to support larger growth over the longer run. Can you maybe frame out for us whether or not this is something you're seeing as well, and how you think this is likely to be resolved over the next, couple quarters?
Craig, first, this is Brendan, and I'm sure the other guys will chime in here. But these incentives, there's two sides of them. One is people wait for them, like you said, and the rollout isn't always the smoothest. There's a lot of people still working remotely, so it's very hard for things to get processed in a timely fashion as far as these incentives are concerned and approval. And there are a lot of I's to dots and T's to cross during the approval process. So we see these incentives as helpful, at least now in the short term. Don't forget, we've got a huge infrastructure bill here that appears to be getting across the finish line that will dwarf any of these programs that we've seen so far. So we are seeing actually more and more incentives, the more, the better. But again, Craig, keep in mind, from our perspective, we're focusing on making sure our vehicles are compelling even when these incentives are removed. We can't tell you when that's going to be, but we're preparing for that time. But we're very grateful for the incentives, and it's not about not biting the hand that feeds us. But there are some adopters that would not be early adopters without those incentives, and we think that at least today and into the near-term future, those incentives are not only beneficial but possibly even necessary for certain sectors to adopt.
Okay, thank you for that. The other question that I just wanted to ask directly, right, is can you reassure us that you would never have built the inventory unless you had credible customer names that you would ship these to when all the boxes get checked? I mean, I think you probably even had the customer names and the soft orders long before you ordered these vehicles from your suppliers and started putting them on your balance sheet. But if you could sort of talk us through this process and tell us sort of what the finished goods inventory is now that's available for delivery if we do see some of these items that are putting the brakes on the market clear. I mean, do we have a slug of orders that go out very quickly, or does this ramp over time?
Well, I'll start with sort of a high-level comment on the, in terms of the product mix. When we're dealing with a range of products from 25 to 40 footers, it's a lot goes into the decisions we have to make on which models that we build up. And so as we have previously disclosed, our focus was on select models within the EV Star platform and our B school bus. So on the EV Star platform, to the extent that we build out our cabin chassis, those are portable, if you will, in terms of they're easily built up to EV Star Cargo Pluses, to our EV Star Plus, and so there's a variety of follow-on models that can utilize that same platform. And so our build-up was very mindful of, if we can't place these all in this fashion, then we can build them out to satisfy the demand and requirements with some of the other models within that platform. So that's really, the great part of having that platform is being able to have the flexibility to deploy across numerous models. On the Beast school bus, each time that we have looked at increasing our production has been based on key market indicators and some of the the numerous ride and drive events that Ryan has been conducting for the better part of a year. So that's been based on a combination of, specific market information along with, the customer orders that we do have in hand, along with the sales pipeline. So there isn't a particular factor that has, driven the production decision, but, in all cases, we've certainly been, factoring in what we have as well as what we see in the short term that we were in a position to fulfill.
And Craig, this is Mike here. I think you had a specific question about finished goods. At the end of the quarter, we had over 50 units in finished goods. And as both Brendan and Fraser have said, we anticipate our school buses are going to start to be in a position to deliver, later this month or this quarter. And so, that ramp up that we began, call it 7-8 months ago after our IPO in the U.S., those vehicles are really going to start to deliver at a much, higher cadence over the coming months.
Okay, so just to clarify, the 50 units are fully built, ready for customer delivery, or at least nearly ready for customer delivery. Is that correct?
Some of those are the cab chassis, and as Fraser mentioned,
they're all ready to go.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. That's very helpful. Thank you so much.
And that's 45 days ago.
Yeah, as of 45 days ago. Yeah. Well, how many of them have been delivered? I mean, can you tell us sort of roughly at this point in the quarter? Have you delivered several, many, a few?
We haven't announced, but we certainly will be doing so before the quarter.
Okay, so how many are physically still in your possession, I guess is the question.
We don't track that or announce that at this stage, but that's certainly something that we're looking at doing in the near term.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Craig.
As a reminder, if you have a question, please press star, then 1 to be joined into the queue. The next question comes from Tate Sullivan with Maxim Group. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. You mentioned the ACT Expo a couple times during your, but will this be the first real step-time demonstration of the Beast, or I thought you were already out there with the Beast, or can you just explain the benefits of this unveiling?
So this is Ryan Shetterly. Everything that we had delivered up to date has been the 36.5-foot variant. This is going to be the industry's first purpose-built Type D 90-passenger zero-emission school bus, and this will be the first time that we're going to be taking it to a trade show.
And then, just can you review the comments about the order for the Beast, or when it potentially? Now, is this, you said pursuant to a customer order, but then I thought you said that maybe it's already ordered the Beast that you might be able to deliver. How will it work? Is it just not finalized from the customer?
Yeah, no. So the first several tranches of vehicles which have been announced in previous releases are all accounted for. So we will have vehicles deployed and delivering to end users that we've already announced, Anaheim USD, a few others right out of the gate. And, the expectation there internally is that those vehicles are in those customers' possession in the next 45 days or so.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Tate.
This concludes our question and answer session. I would like to turn the conference back over to Fraser Atkinson for any closing remarks.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And as this has been a topic of discussion, I would like to point out that the ACT Expo, the particulars of our participation, we are a gold sponsor at the event. It's being held at the Long Beach Convention Center on August 31st and September 1st. So if you're in the greater Los Angeles area and able to attend either days, Ryan, hopefully you'd be able to come by our booth, which is right at the entrance, and we will have our EV Star with the side ADA, our Beast school bus, and our EV Star Cargo Plus, all in at the ACT Expo. So it's really great opportunity to see our vehicle and the unveiling of our school bus that we've talked about on this call. So once again, thank you for listening to our earnings call, and we look forward to providing updates and the exciting time